All right, well, in the sake of time, we've got a lot to cover today. So good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Thrilled that you're here today to join us. We're excited to really talk about this important discussion on both EcoVadis and ISO 2012-1, especially as it relates to sustainability in venues and events. So we'll be covering the importance of these two different systems to really help a business build value, as well as the best practices that we found in each. We'll hear from a recently certified organization, Craft Sports and Entertainment, and leave some time at the end for any of your questions. Just to start, I want to explain a little bit more about who we are. So 3R Sustainability really sits at the intersection of helping organizations realize the business value of sustainability. We work with a number of clients across all kinds of industries, including sports and entertainment, from sustainability management systems, climate and greenhouse gas services, the built environment and venues, as well as the assurance of the actual data that we collect. This is the third in our series of webinars for this year. We're going to be talking soon about LEAD V5 and additional EcoVadis updates throughout the year. So be sure to sign up for our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date on our webinars, and be sure to join in on the Q&A feature at the end. Well, let me introduce today's panelists. We're really excited to have here today Gina McElraith. Gina is the Director of Sustainability Assurance at Sustainability Assurance Services and our resident management system expert with decades of experience in really understanding how to help an organization build a sustainability management system. We're also lucky to have with us here today Dina Champa, who's joining us from Craft Sports and Entertainment as their Energy, Water, and Waste Administrator. We got to know Dina through our work together with ISO 2012-1, and we're looking forward to her sharing more about her experience today. We're going to cover a couple of different things today. In particular, the business case for sports and entertainment or sports and events, and really how you can best use ISO 2012-1 and EcoVadis to really take a management system approach to your business. We're seeing increasingly a number of companies and teams coming to us and saying, I got a request for an EcoVadis submission, or I've been asked to pursue ISO 2012-1. Can you help me figure out what that is? And most importantly, how does it relate to my business? And how do I use that certification to really drive business value? Then we're going to talk specifically about the craft experience on their journey toward ISO 2012-1. And we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So let's talk a little bit about why ISO 2012-1 and EcoVadis are starting to appear more in the sports and events industry. We've been seeing this for a couple of years now in Europe, where ISO 2012-1 is really becoming a standard for how an organization has built sustainability into their event planning, management, and operations. So it's kind of becoming a gold star, if you will, to make sure that as venues are trying to attract people to their venue from hosting events, how do they make sure that that event is actually being held in a way that's going to help the event achieve the objectives? What we're starting to see is that different kinds of stakeholders are asking about ISO 2012-1 and EcoVadis. There are different events that are looking for venues to be able to host their event are starting to have requirements around that. Corporate partners are starting to ask, are you doing around sustainability? And they want to be aligned with teams and venues that in fact have built sustainability into how they operate. And it really is providing an opportunity to have not just standardized metrics, but actually being able to then use those metrics to drive greater performance within the organization. There are a lot of similarities then between ISO 2012-1 and EcoVadis. We'll go through those today, but again, both coming from a management system approach of understanding what's important to your venue or your event. How are you in fact, identifying your most material topics, and then how are you managing those over time to drive better business performance? So some of the benefits that we're seeing is it's really it's something that can be scalable across events. So by taking an approach it's not only a one-time effort, but you're then seeing the value when you take it across multiple events that you host, and it's creating some repeatable and measurable processes for you that you're able to implement over time and tweak based on the event, but it gives you a framework not only to see improvement in that event over time, but also then as you have new people joining your event administration process, how do you get them up to speed quickly? So it becomes a nice way to be able to kind of build that institutional knowledge that gets passed on from event to event. We're seeing increased engagement by the team members then working on the event. And then we're also seeing that we're increasingly brand reputation is being enhanced by putting some of these certifications in place because now you've got a way to be able to communicate your level of commitment and performance. And then, of course, as is important to every organization, really seeing the financial and sustainability success by having these types of assessments and certifications in place. Because once you've gathered all of that data, you want to make sure that you're using that data to drive improved performance and value. I'm going to turn it over to Gina then to talk a little bit more about each of these certifications and what it would mean for you.
Thanks, Jana. All right, let's get into a little bit of the details of what it means to what is included in ISO and EcoVadis and a few others. So we'll start with ISO 2012-1. And a hint that I really like, I know there's all the different names, more acronyms than we can all think about, but the way to remember this standard in particular is it was developed for the London Olympics. London Olympics were in 2012, and it's the first standard. So I really like to tie it back to that foundation because it helps me understand and see how this can be implemented and how it was designed. So it starts off following the Plan, Do, Check Act of Management Systems, and anybody who's been around ISO at all, that's the process. But 2012-1 really is a bit different in that it broadens the perspective. It really looks what we call interested parties. You see all those that are interested in your event, and we'll talk a bit about with that in our case study. But that list was so much longer and can be so much longer than you initially think about. But it really does help you bring in all the different those who are touched by what you're doing. Helps you develop policies, identify what's most important, those key features that matter, and then set objectives and targets, which really sets up the rest of the process. So you have your system. Once you have those objectives and targets and the areas you're going to focus on for your event, then everything else rolls through. You operation. I'm going to try. You use the plan, and then you really engage your stakeholders. The other part about this standard that is key is suppliers and how the suppliers and most events have a variety of different suppliers that are involved, and it provides you a way to make sure that they're helping you ensure that your event is the most sustainable it can be. It also ensures that as Janice said, the people involved, whether you're communicating internally to employees or even part-time event staff, anything like that, but also your external stakeholders, your event attendees, fans around the world, all of the above can help you engage and communicate through your event. And then finally, you can measure and monitor how you did. So not just in having the event, but then learning from it, checking how you did against those objectives and targets, conducting audits to see how checking your processes, and also completing a management review. Then if you find whatever you find, any areas you need to correct, you move on and then implement those for your next event. So it really is a ongoing continuous improvement process. And then also highlight in the ACT area, if you are going to receive certification for your sustainable event management system, there is an external audit that you receive and also annual surveillance. So that is a great check to verify and validate the work that you're doing in ongoing continuous improvement. So then the next one we'll talk about then is EcoVadis. So EcoVadis is a little bit different in that it is an assessment. It is, again, looking at your management systems, and this is assessing your organization sustainability program, and you'll receive a rating from EcoVadis. EcoVadis has 4 key areas: environment, labor and human rights, ethics, and procurement. And for the sports industry, you'll see that they have different key sustainability issues. So in this one, instead of or in addition to the issues that you identify through your stakeholder engagement, they've identified those that are common throughout the industry and are auto kind of pre-populated, and you'll see those that are highlighted are the high priority ones. Anybody who's been involved in events or the sports industry will definitely recognize those as the ones that need and are highest of importance. And then there's the list of others that are also involved in it. When you are requested or when you complete an EcoVadis submission, you will provide evidence to a questionnaire that will assess you towards how you're doing in each of these areas based on the process. The output of this process is a rating. It can be a medal in some cases, depending on your performance in it, but it also tells, in addition to like the certification that you would receive for ISO standard, in this case, you would receive a medal that is an external communication on the performance of your systems and the performance of your operation. The next slide, please. So comparing the management systems, we've got EcoVadis. We also see that we have ISO 14001, which is an environmental management system. With EcoVadis, we have the 4 different areas and themes. With ISO, which is an ISO 14001, it just focuses on your environmental impact. It does not directly involve labor and human rights, ethical business practices, or sustainable procurement, but it does allow you, if you were to implement that one, focus on your environmental impact of your operation. And then finally, we have ISO 20121. As we talked about, it is a sustainable event system, and so it talks about and you include in your evaluation the environmental impact, labor and human rights, ethical business practices, and we talked about, we had suppliers involved, all of those wrapped up into the requirements of a sustainable management system. So as we compare EcoVadis and ISO, there are some key requirements that align in both. What's most important, I would say, in ISO management of 2012-1 is leadership commitment. It all starts with ensuring that you've got leadership commitment to the sustainability and providing the resources and commitment and dedication to implementing the system. You have policies, stakeholder engagement, and impact assessment, and also impacts and risks. And then once you identify those priorities, as we talked about, then you mitigate and address those issues, which is your operation plan. Legal compliance is important in ensuring that you're meeting the standards in that, and then finally monitoring and improvement. So of those requirements on ISO 2012-1, you implement those as part of your system, and for EcoVadis, those are assessed equally as part of the rating system. So you can include all of those with EcoVadis. If you don't have something that isn't it's not required, it just impacts the final score that you get. So if you don't have a sustainability policy, you're still going to, be assessed by EcoVadis, but it is just going to mean that you have a potentially a lower score, whereas with ISO 2012-1, it is a requirement of the system. To implement this, there's a relatively, I would say, painless approach. That's from my side. Getting to enjoy these, I actually find this a really interesting and helpful process. So the first part is to really look and see what you've got in place. And I actually say it's enjoyable because what you find is you probably are doing a lot of the things already. So if you are conducting events, you're planning ahead, you're getting input from your stakeholders. So most of the time I see when I work with clients and those interested is you're doing a lot of the pieces already. And so conducting a gap assessment to see where are those areas where we can fill in and answer, what aren't you doing, or where are those areas where we need to beef up the work a little bit. So that's the first step. And then we go through and if stakeholder engagement hasn't been completed, we really go into it and get all of the different stakeholders and interested parties and document the system. That allows you to institutionalize and have that repeatable process. Then you implement the system. Then we go through the internal audit. I really appreciate that part of the process because that's often the value that comes out of the ISO implementation is that check part. So a lot of people have your processes, you have your procedures, and then you come in and you go, oh, why this isn't working, or they just aren't listening to me, or I keep having the same issue over and over again. This internal audit and the processes involved with it help you address some of those ongoing issues or areas where you're struggling, or in some cases it kind of feels like whack-a-mole. This gives you a system to address those. And then finally, you pursue your third-party certification if that is part of your process. And one more. So yes, those are the details. Now let's get into the good stuff, how we implement. So as Jenna mentioned, we had the pleasure of working with have the pleasure still, working with Craft Sports and Entertainment on implementing their enterprise-wide ISO 2012-1 management system. Dina will give us all the details, but I will highlight that their experience really was one of those, just like I talked about, where they had a lot of the parts in place, were doing a lot of really good things, but the management system has allowed them to bring it all together. It took us approximately 7 months from beginning the gap assessment until completing the external audit. The result was certification, and they had no nonconformancies. And if anybody has gone through an ISO audit or gone through audits of certifications, that speaks a lot to the work that they had done, and the fact that they were ready for this, and it has added value to them. So with that, Jenna, let's talk to Dina.
Absolutely. I'm excited for this. So Dina, before you decided to implement ISO 2012-1, can you talk a little bit more about what your organization had done from a sustainability standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Yeah, before pursuing certification, we definitely had a lot of different sustainability initiatives in place. When the stadium was built back in 2002, for example, there was a wastewater treatment plant that was put in place to service the stadium and also the neighboring Patriot Place retail facility. We've leveraged renewable energy credits. We're enrolled in demand response programs. We also have some on-site energy with our cogeneration units and our natural gas fuel cells. But there wasn't a formally outlined sustainability program before we pursued certification. So that's really why we saw pursuing ISO 2012-1 to be so beneficial.
That's great. You guys had obviously done a lot before, and this kind of brought it together into a kind of a repeatable process for you from an event standpoint. What were some of the challenges or opportunities that made you realize that certification could be valuable for you?
Yeah, definitely. We were going through the LEED certification process, and we really saw how the ISO 2012-1 certification could really complement and help us grow our sustainability program, really letting us have the opportunity to take a step back and plan out a vision for what we wanted our sustainability program to look like in the coming years. Um, so one of the most valuable aspects of the certification was definitely determining our overall sustainability pillars. We ended up on 6 guiding pillars and themes to help guide the program going forward. And we also appreciated the emphasis on continual improvement over the years so that we could kind of set, you know, targets and objectives for the next year or two, but then we can refine them in the coming years as we find improvements going forward.
That's great. Kind of a question for both of you. Can you tell us about the implementation journey? Like, what were some of the key steps? And maybe, Gina, you can talk a little bit more about how 3R supported the process.
Yeah,
Dina, I'll start with you.
perfect. Yeah, it was great to work with 3R. Like Gina mentioned, we did a gap assessment with them first to make sure that we were in a good spot to kind of see what the lift would be to pursue certification. And everything was looking good, but there was definitely some things that we still needed to, wrap up and put the bow on top. So we worked with 3R to go through the stakeholder engagement process, creating a formal sustainability policy for the organization, and really defining those 6 pillars to help guide the program. And then we got ready for the internal audit, which 3R conducted, and then kind of looked through those results and prepped for the external audit with a third-party verifier.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dina. Gina, what would you add?
So I think from our perspective, what I found most interesting was seeing how this process helped craft and help Dina really bring everyone together and understand their role in sustainability and in the event management system. So because the ISO standard includes employees in training, it includes communication, it includes suppliers, that broad area of interested parties. It includes fans, all of the different areas. You would talk to we would schedule meetings to get input from different departments, and they'd be like, oh, I don't go to the events, you don't need me for this. And we're like, no, you do contribute. And I really enjoyed the conversations of them being able to talk about all the great work that they were doing and then realize how it contributed to the overall event success. Those support departments, how the work that they were doing, really helps, and how everything is an integrated system. When one part of the process works, we were able, some events you're looking out 5 to 6 years, some events are 5 to 6 hours. And we were really able to look at working on a system that met all of those needs. The other area that I thought was really important and helpful was the communications and having solid conversations throughout the organization on the value of communication and bringing all of the pieces together, as Dina talked about. Lots of good work going on, but to be able to pull it together into a common message, that have meeting the requirements of having public communications, and seeing the value of that and seeing the feedback from external stakeholders and fans, all of the above, to be able to talk about and the work that's going on. Dina, I don't know if you're going to mention it, but I really would love for you to tell the story of what we're looking at here and
Oh, sure.
how you were able to light the lighthouse green.
Yeah, I can give a little spiel on that for sure. So for the past 2 years, we've lit the lighthouse, which is right there, green for Green Sports Day, which is October 6th. So in 2023, and then this was this past year in 2024, we lit the stadium green yes, perfect for Green Sports Day. And because we had gone through, we had already been certified back at the end of August. We took the opportunity, to showcase Green Sports Day, but then also the slides would flip, and we had some logos up there with 3R, and then BSI, which did the external audit for us, just to kind of highlight, shining a light on sustainability and that we are officially ISO 2012 certified. So yeah, great image to kind of share with the internal staff and then externally as well.
That's great. Since you got your certification, what kind of tangible benefits have you seen for your organization, Dina?
Definitely. I think overall, just having the vision kind of laid out for what our sustainability program is going to look like going forward, knowing that it will adapt here and there. But kind of like Gina just mentioned, one of the big tangible benefits is being able to unify all of the different departments together on all of these projects when it comes to sustainability. So when we first started speaking with some of them, they didn't realize how their specific role might interact and help support the sustainability pillars. But now everyone really understands that each and every role is really tied to this sustainability program. So whether they're in marketing, sponsorship, operations, custodial, fan engagement, they all tie together to support these pillars. And then not only just the full-time staff, but the event day part-time staff too. They're also rolled into it as well. We're working on different trainings with this upcoming event season of how we can interact with them more and educate them and really have them be more part of the program as well.
That's great. What kind of changes then did you see within your organization? Kind of what's given you the biggest impact?
Definitely. I think the two pillars that kind of come to mind first is definitely the community engagement piece, and then also the workforce development and engagement. So on the community engagement side, we've done a couple of different things, but the big thing I think is that we launched our sustainability webpage on the Gillette Stadium website back in October. So that was just a great way to show to the public. To fans, anyone that comes to the site, that sustainability is something that the organization takes seriously, and they can learn more. All of our pillars are listed out there. Our sustainability policy is public facing on that website as well. So I think that um, has been a great change and a way to showcase that we've done a lot in sustainability over the years, but now we're ready to share it publicly and let others see it as well. And then on the workforce development side, we've been increasing our internal communications to staff. So we have weekly newsletters that go out that we've been adding sustainability updates and information, like we've information on our e-waste recycling program and our in-cartridge recycling program and things like that. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out to the whole organization. So if someone works at Gillette Stadium or at a different company that falls under the craft group, we're able to highlight some of our sustainability initiatives in there as well. And then as part of the ISO 2012-1 certification, we created a SharePoint site. So it's all internal for any full-time employees to be able to access different resources and policies on that website. So that's another great place that we've been able to interact with our workforce and teach them about sustainability.
That's great. I love too that, when we talk about sustainability, it's about kind of the long-lasting nature of something, right? That repeatable idea. One of the things that really intrigued me about this particular management system certification is around the idea of having specific targets and objectives for your events, and then using those to be able to drive decisions throughout. And the financial piece is a piece of that as well, right? So what are the financial objectives? What kind of sustainability commitments do we have as an organization? What is the event requirements, right? So if it's a concert or someone's coming to your place and you're hosting the event, what kind of requirements do they have? So it's great that there's kind of all of that feeds in to really drive then the process that you put in place, which is a repeatable process to get the results then that you want to have, right? So that continual improvement piece is, okay, how well do we do? Did we meet the requirements and the goals that we had, for the event? So what do you see then as some kind of key ongoing initiatives that you have now that you've got the certification? How are you communicating that and using that?
Yeah, definitely. One of the big things that we've done since getting certified is creating a green team. We had a smaller green team internally before. That was kind of focused on operations and custodial and our food and beverage teams. But now we've expanded that across all different departments, basically everyone that we talked with when we were initially going through the certification process, all the different departments, from, even our team foundations as part of that as well. Folks from our special events side of the business, food and beverage, just anyone and everyone, having representatives from all the different departments to come together about once a month and talk through different ideas and programs. And then, like I mentioned, with the sustainability SharePoint site, that's been a great way that we've been able to continue communicating different information through that. And we've also created office hours, we've been calling them, for any event, any staff member to stop by. We usually do it like once a week, drop in hours if they want to learn more about the sustainability program and see how they can get involved. So that's been a great way for folks that, might be in marketing or some other side of the business that might want to get involved themselves.
That's great. So if anyone is out there considering pursuing ISO 2012-1, or doing a sustainability program and kind of advancing their management system, what advice would you give them based on your experience, Dina?
Definitely. I think from my perspective, one of the things we really considered when we were going through the process was the scope of what part of the company is encompassed in the certification. So the way it works for craft sports entertainment, our certification encompasses the whole entity. So that includes Gillette Stadium as the stadium, but then also the Patriots and Revolution. So in the future, if and one of the teams builds a stadium somewhere or we build another building somewhere, it's still encompassed in that certification. We don't need a separate certification to cover that subsect of the company. So just kind of having that forward thinking and seeing, maybe you do want to just certify one part of the business, but for us, it made sense to do the whole big scope of the whole craft sports entertainment. So definitely recommend just making sure you evaluate that.
Gina, how about for you? What kind of tips and tricks would you give organizations who are considering pursuing certification? What sets somebody up for
Yeah.
success?
Don't be
Yeah.
afraid. I think that's definitely an important part, is don't be afraid. Most people hear ISO and think, man, that's a lot of work. And it's not, it can be a lot of work if you don't have a lot of parts in place or pieces in place to start. But in the end, it allows you, as someone who is typically the sole person, your job is responsibility. I'll say when we started, it was Dina's program. Dina, go figure out the waste. Dina, go figure out, how we, what the energy use is. Dina was great, but Dina is one person, and I hope that she is seeing how now everybody is involved and allows
Mhm.
her to bring everyone together. So, the first tip is you're probably already doing good work, or else that there's some gaps, and this really is an opportunity to put a framework together and give structure to address some of the challenges you are experiencing, and or allowing you to continue working on your progress and improving continuously for the long term.
That's great. Well, before we jump to any questions, please do remember, put your questions in the Q&A if you have them. And then, Dina, any last kind of thoughts to leave the group on here that you want to make sure you share?
Yeah, just one final tidbit. I think just emphasizing that the ISO 2012-1 certification is really focused on that continual improvement side. So, the business doesn't need to be perfect in waste or energy today. It's breaking it down into tangible steps for that year and then progressing continually from that. But ISO 2012-1 really provides the framework to help define those goals and then set those targets and objectives to meet those goals. Um, and then also just the fact that it provides the credibility to all the outside stakeholders, to fans, to the rest of the company, to everyone coming to your organization through these surveillance audits and external audits, and having these third-party verifications to make sure that everything is you're doing it as you say you are throughout the certification process.
Great. Well, Preston, we'll turn it over to you for any questions that came in.
Hi everyone, I'm Preston. I'll be monitoring the Q&A today. It's a little slow, and you guys have 3 of the best online available for your questions. So come on, put it in the chat. But I have a question from my own point of view that I had probably a year ago when we started really focusing on ISO 2012-1. I've been in events for 10 years and in sustainability for half that. And I think I was like, ISO system, all these terms. Like maybe Gina, can you explain like I'm five, really what this all is? I know we've been talking about it for the last 35 minutes, but if anyone's still feeling a little overwhelmed, what would you explain to someone on the street about what this really is?
Someone on the street. So
A passerby.
passerby is this really is about 5 words or less. That, I can't do that, Preston. But
Oh,
it is about doing what you say, saying what you do, and then do what you say. So the management system approach gives you the framework, but it really is simplifying it in coming up with your process and then implementing it. And I know from events, in my experience of 10 years in hospitality and events, is we spend a lot of time just doing. Like, we're executors. If you're an event person, you are an executor, you're an operator, you are making sure that things are happening and guests are happy. And you don't always slow down and take the time to say what you do. You just do it. And so that's really how I would simplify it, is all the terms, all the everything else. It gives you the framework to say what you do and then do what you say.
I would just add on that too. To me, what really excited me about it was this idea of kind of knowing what is important to your organization and to the event and to the stakeholders, the people asking you to host the event, right? Including the fans and attendees. Like, what's important, and then how do you plan the event to make sure you can deliver what's important in a way that is sustainable for your organization, identifies and manages risks, right? So you kind of do all of that thinking up front. And then how are we going to measure the success of the event? So what KPIs and data do we need? And so once you've done all that planning, then you actually, like Gina said, right, then you work the plan. You actually have a way to communicate to everyone, this is how we're going to do it in a consistent, standard way. You work the event, and then you look at the event and see, how well did we perform? How well did we compare to our success metrics? Where do we want to tweak and improve for next time? So it just gives you a process and framework to communicate and get everybody on board with the kind of, how do we make sure that this is the most successful event possible?
We got a question in the Q&A. What did Craft benefit from getting third-party validation versus doing kind of just the internal audit first or second?
I think we kind of used the internal audit almost as like a practice test, for lack of better words, to see like how we can improve, and then make sure that we were ready for the external audit. And having that third party verification just really solidified everything that we had put in place. So while you don't need to necessarily do that extra step, we found the benefit of doing it, and and just having that extra feedback, that other set of eyes looking at the certification. But yeah, I don't know if Gina, if you have another perspective, but yeah, we found it helpful.
Yeah, it really does allow you to show the logo, to show that you're certified. So the external verification, validation of your processes, having implemented a lot of systems, I know that if I don't have the third-party audit, I don't have that company or that outside service to hold me accountable. It's really easy, as I said, you get busy, your system, especially when your system is young, being dedicated and holding yourself accountable internally. Yes, you can do it. Yes, it can happen. But having that third-party audit gives you that deadline. It gives you that process, and to ensure that you are working the full system. And also, like I said, getting that external view of it. You're deep in the weeds. You're thinking about it all the time. Getting that external view and someone else to look at your processes from a holistic approach, and from a high level approach towards the standard, can be invaluable in those times when things get busy or you're in crunch time or something, getting that third party perspective is very valuable, and knowing getting value out of the process in addition to the certification and the certificate.
And then being able to communicate that externally, right? So for, potential corporate partners, others to be able to see, we took that step to actually get the third party verification. So you can trust that what we are saying we're doing, we're actually doing, whether it's LEED certification, ISO 2012-1, and EcoVadis assessment, that following through and actually having somebody say, yes, I've looked at your evidence, I've looked at your documentation, I've, seen how you've operated this and how you use the data. That is, incredibly valuable internally and externally.
Great. We have another question. For sustainable procurement, what specifically was addressed or focused on? Was it focused on carbon, waste generation, recycled packaging, supplier working conditions? Is there anything specific for craft that was focused on as part of this assessment? Or if not, Gina could talk more generally about what some of our other clients have done.
Yeah, I think we looked at kind of how we go about purchasing things and like making sure that when we purchase something, we're not just looking at the first option, but seeing what sustainable options might be there. So kind of that procurement side, being conscious of the options and making sure we weigh all the options that we do have. And then on the end of life side, if we had purchased a product, a hard to recycle item of some sort in the past, making sure that we do our best to recycle it, upcycle it, give it a second life once where it's left the stadium here and we no longer need to use it.
And to add to that, Craft is unique in that they don't have an external or third-party concessionaire that is often what you see in an operation like this or in a stadium. And so they had internal, discussions already. The advantage I can see is having the framework. When you've got your goals, you communicate those goals and your objectives and targets to your suppliers. So if you do have a concessionaire that works in your venue, or if you're bringing in a variety of different suppliers, talking to them locally or depending on the scale of the operation, it gives you an automatic discussion point, and that I have a target of reducing, my waste by 30%, or I want to have a zero waste event. Well, then your supplier already knows that, okay, well, I need to find a solution, or I can bring them solutions to that problem, as opposed to let's have a sustainable event. And then somebody goes, what's that look like? So it gives you that framework to it too, whether it's a large organization with significant, purchasing power and influence, or, a company picnic. It works at any scale.
Love that. That's the only question. We have 1 more minute, everyone. Get your questions in. If not, I think this is a wonderful discussion today. Thank you all for your engagement. And Jana, any last words of wisdom?
No, I appreciate everyone attending. When you start talking management systems, it can seem scary, as Gina pointed out, but really what it is doing is it's giving you a great framework to be able to know what you're trying to accomplish and get everybody on the same page to do it, and then figure out how do you drive the continual improvement to get there. So, Dina, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. It's been wonderful working with you and really seeing the incredible work that you guys have done there and how the value that you've been able to get from getting this certification. And Gina, as always, thank you.
Right. Thank you all for joining. You'll all get a recorded segment follow-up. So we look forward to any additional questions that come up in your rewatch. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.